Hello, it's Keith here, and this is episode 1 of my 6502 assembly tutorials. Now if you're new to this channel, I previously did a series of 8 Z80 assembly tutorials.
So once I finish this lot, I'll go back to the 8 Z80 tutorials and just keep learning the same videos. I mean, maybe that's the best way to learn programming.
And I wanted to extend that and start teaching 6502. Now, I originally learned Z80 first, so these will compare and...
So that programs the Apple IIe, the Atari 5200, BBC Micro, Commodore 64, Atari Lynx, NES, PC Engine, SNES, and the VIC-20. Wow. Yeah. There's so many people making mods for these systems in 2021. It's huge.
Contrast 6502 to Z80 assembly. However, I'm assuming you know no assembly already, and I'm really aiming these for an absolute beginner at programming, so I'm hoping that even if you know no assembly, C or any other language, you should get some interest and experience using these tutorials, because I'm really hoping you can use them from an absolute no prior experience.
Well, from what I've learned so far, I watched a C tutorial, I fell asleep to it. They're basically each language is very similar. It's not like Chinese versus Russian. There's a lot of stuff that's similar.
So I'm going to show you today how we can use an assembler to compile quickly some code. I'm going to talk through how the code works. We're going to do some very simple samples, but most importantly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide, wherever possible, all of the source code, the tools, the emulators pre-configured for you to use within a Windows environment, so you can compile very simple examples very quickly and test those examples to see what they're doing and why, so that we can use assembly language, learn how the commands work and see the results with just a few commands, and we'll be able to get started really quickly. And because all of the tools I use are free or even open source, you should be able to download them for free, use them in whatever way you want. And although all of the tools I'm using are Windows based, they do all work very well on Windows XP, so even if you're using a Mac or a Linux machine, you should be able to use them through some kind of Windows emulation, a virtual machine, so hopefully you can get them working even if you are in a different system. Now that said, the assembler I use is called Vasm. It's a command line assembler, and it can be compiled to any system. So whether you're using Windows, Mac or Linux, you can get a native build of Vasm. So you would just then need to provide your own emulators, but you could still use the assembly scripts that I'm providing. So you could compile the examples you're seeing today without a Windows machine at all if you so prefer. I'm just recommending Windows because it's my main operating system that I'm most experienced in, so I can provide very easy to use tools for Windows. So let's see what we're going to be looking at. Now if you go to my website, you can use this Get the Development Tools icon here, and you should be able to download a 7-zip file of the tools that I use for my assembly.
So I've done that. Oh, I've already got the S drive. No. Okay, hang on. Let's do this again.
Now, if you've seen my YouTube channel before, I've recently done a Grime 6502 series where I ported a small Z80 game called Grime Z8.
You actually you watch him program a whole game in its entirety, so that'll be step 3
to the 6502. So I've been working on this last week, and I'm now doing the 68,000 version, but we're going to have a look at the build environment I used for that, because that build environment is literally the basis for these tutorials. So what we have is we have a folder here that is basically what you will get from that 7-zip if you choose to download it, and we have a batch file here called sdrive.bat. Now if we run this, it will create a virtual S drive on your machine, and so I will run that now, but it has actually created a T drive.
Fuck did I put it? Okay, I'm going to shove that on the desktop so I don't lose it. least all my files are organised now. That's another thing that's happened in my life. Nothing is no longer, that's a double negative. Nothing is no longer hidden and spending hours and hours searching for it. If I want ghosts and goblins, I just go A to Z, and there's all my ghost UFO sightings, rods. That'll be a fun one. What's happening with the Roswell rods these days? Tower of Babel, ugly people, Iggy head, blah blah blah. So it's copying this. And what do you say?
To the 6502. So I've been working on this last week, and I'm now doing the 68,000 version, but we're going to have a look at the build environment I used for that, because that build environment is literally the basis for these tutorials. So what we have is we have a folder here that is basically what you will get from that 7-zip if you choose to download it, and we have a batch file here called sdrive.bat. Now if we run this, it will create a virtual S drive.
Okay. This is stuff that's beyond me. Look at that. It's created an S drive, and it's not even power ISO. It's self-made. The only thing I've added is WinApe, because he does some WinApe tutorials. WinApe is the Spectrum ZX80 emulator. So go to emulators folder, and I've put WinApe 2 in there. The thing is though, this is we use Notepad to create all the programs in. Now that I've said that, it's going to crash, is it? Hello? Ah, wrong drive, twit. Alright, I knew that. Okay. Would you like to do these now? Yeah, okay, whatever. Whatever you feel like doing, Jeffo. No, well, don't do it then. So the thing is, F6. So he's got a batch file that loads all the emulators. So you want a Commodore, fucking Commodore 64. There you go. You've got Vice. So all I want to know right now is how I can hack the code that brings up these emulators to add WinApe in this menu, and then I'll be very happy with myself, and I'll have a lolly. No, I'm not allowed any sugar anymore. Yeah. I'm not really foreign, you know. I just do it to appear more sophisticated.
On your machine, and so I will run that now. But it has actually created a T drive on my machine, and the reason for that is I already had a drive letter using
well, you
S,
shouldn't have done it
so
twice,
we are going to use T here, but it makes no difference at all to the way the tools work. The 6502 tools will use S, T or U. The Z80 tools will use Z, X or Y. And the X6000 tools will use X, Y or Z, I think it is. Anyway, so we now have a virtual drive, and we have this tree structure, and you should be able to see it's fairly logical. We have a variety of folders here. We have build folders here. These are the code that's being assembled that will be executable. A release folder here. This is the finished code. An emulator folder, which is obviously the emulators. As I say, they are all free, the emulators I use. Source folders, which are the source files for the common modules that we'll be building on. And sources, which is the main source codes that we will be looking at in these tutorials. We also have a utilities folder, which is some tools, including a few that I've made myself here, that we will be using as well. As I say, if you don't want to use my tools, you're welcome to just use VASM and the source files. The source files will be available separately from these tools because they will be more frequently updated.
Will do, mate.
But whatever way you want to do things, hopefully these tutorials will help you learn very quickly, very simple 6502 assembly. So Well, all of my assembly is done within Notepad++ these days, so let's start that up. So here we go. We have a Notepad++ window, and you'll see I've already pre-configured this with one.
All right, the rest you know. Really, after watching this episode, I'm just gonna frickin' dick around and chuck in a BBC Micro ROM in here and see if he can play games with his versions of the emulators. Let's chuck a SNES game in there. He's already got one. Let's play some Aladdin. All right, and then we'll hack Aladdin and turn him into a sultan. I don't know. Whatever. Bye.